first question of the day for streaming purposes is, what is the National Prayer Breakfast and why the fuck does it exist? Great question. The National Prayer Breakfast is a, like, once a year, twice a year. I don't know. It's an event that takes place, Rush, right? Where you have had, like, it's an event that takes place and it's explicitly Christian and it's kind of behind closed doors, and it's a whole bunch of people that get together and push their Christian ideology onto politicians so that they can pass that legislation, which we can see is working so well for us today. We can see here, this is an NPR article for the prayer breakfast, where Congress is asserting some stuff. So Congress takes a hold of the prayer breakfast from secretive Christian evangelical group. On its face, the National Prayer Breakfast is a serene, bipartisan event full of spiritual reflection. But over the years, the breakfast has also been a source of controversy, full of shadowy fundraising, behind-the-scenes lobbying, and even infiltration by Russian spies. So lawmakers have now taken it out of the hands of the secretive Christian evangelical group that runs it for decades, otherwise known as the International Foundation, or the Family, otherwise known as the Fellowship Foundation. Also, how evil does your organization have to be that it's just singularly called the International Organization? I mean, come on. That's some pretty evil shit right there, right? All right. A name popularized in recent years by a book by the same name and a 2019 Netflix documentary based on it. It painted a picture of a clubby, closed-door group that had ears of lots of Washington power players and bold-faced names without much transparency about their donors or agenda. When Senator James Langford, Republican of Oklahoma, and I were co-chairs of the National Prayer Breakfast for a number of years ago, there were lots of questions raised about the finances, who was invited, and how it was structured, said Senator Chris Coons, Democrat of Delaware, chairman of the Senate Ethics Committee and frequent participant in the prayer breakfast. And frankly, we had to admit, as co-chairs, we didn't know much as we felt we should have. Democrat from Delaware Coons and several others help, a new nonprofit group was formed, the National Prayer Breakfast Foundation, with the sole purpose of putting on the signature event, which I don't think should exist, because there should be a separation between church and state, and this seems like a pretty strong endorsement of church for state. It's headed by former Democratic Senator Mark Pryor of Arkansas, liberal bastion that place is, who said the first big change, in addition to the new legal status, is it will be smaller and more controlled, or maybe more insular. We expect there to be maybe 300 people in attendance as opposed to like 3,500 in years past, so it's going to be just members and plus ones, and hopefully it will be a smaller, more intimate gathering. The event is also being moved from prominent Washington hotel to the U.S. Capitol complex. The changes will essentially wall off members of Congress from mixing with any unforeseen guests who present potential conflicts of interest or worse, otherwise known as basically just being an event for more lobbying. It's going to be more controlled. There are still questions about how much the new group is a break from the old. And then this goes into where the National Prayer Breakfast came from. Basically, it was Eisenhower, blah, 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 blah. What is the family? Now, this is the part that I actually really want to get into, is what is this family? What is this international organization, right? The group ran the prayer breakfast for decades, but the breakfast is just the tip of the family's influence. It has wide and international reach of elite friends, and unlike the televangelists seen on TV screens on Sundays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, the fellowship is deliberately cloistered. I wish I could say more about it, but it's working precisely because it's private. President Republican Ronald Reagan said in 1985 of his work with Doug Coe, the longtime leadership of the fellowship. Coe died in 2017. Sad for him. The group has ties reaching from the highest to the lowest rungs of federal government. Senators and members of Congress huddle with representatives of the group in a townhouse on Capitol Hill known as the C Street Center. Let's take a look, shall we? Little brick building. So innocuous. Who knew what could possibly lay within those walls? What dirty, dirty sausages would be made? Members close to the group have said they reflect on the kind of week they are having and sometimes do Bible studies. Much of what they discuss, though, by design, is not known. There have been concerns about the family's access and questions about its agenda. The group has paid for overseas trips for members and been close in particular to GOP members and is linked with anti-LGBTQA plus initiatives. In recent years, the prayer breakfast ballooned from a relatively small event into a multi-day affair that drew thousands and went beyond just prayer. Oh, here we are into the Young Turks. That was what that was linked to. This is just talking about the group, a queer advocacy group here, warning about the prayer breakfast. Because why would having a bunch of right-wing authoritarian Christians who want to start a theocracy be a bad thing for the queer community? I wonder why. Let's see. That include Maria Butina. In case you're not familiar with Maria Butina, she was a Russian agent who joined into the United States government at a fairly high level during the Trump administration. In 2018, the Department of Justice charged Butina with a conspiracy to act as an agent of the Russian Federation within the United States without prior notification. In other words, the U.S. government said she was really a spy. She was arrested and convicted to serve 15 months in federal prison, and when she got out, she began serving in the Russian parliament. That's pretty fucking clear-cut, I think. The event had become unwieldy, and it became difficult to keep tabs on who was coming and going, mixing with lawmakers, which is important because you want to make sure that the people you are having in office are being held to account professionally, right? That's kind of the definition of public service. Following some of the revelations, many Democrats stopped attending. Something had to change. I do think that there were concerns raised and expressed by members of both parties, both houses, about a range of different issues, Coons said. Some involved who were the invited guests, some involved the book and Netflix documentary that you referenced, some just involved a lack of clarity from an ethics perspective. Oh, I love that. Some people who are involved a lack of clarity from an ethics perspective. It's just what you want to hear, right? Excuse me. About how the event was structured and organized. It certainly doesn't mean the fellowship's influence still won't be entrenched in Washington. It will continue to hold its own event at a DC hotel and will beam in the speeches of the event for the gathered audience. Besides, in the dark is mostly how the group has operated for years. So what about the new group? Well, this is talking about the new prayer breakfast. And as I said, I'm not going to get into this. I think the National Prayer Breakfast is bullshit. It shouldn't be a thing. Like, if you want to have a breakfast where you say a prayer, go to a fucking cafe. So now we go to the Fellowship, which is a Christian organization that was founded in 1935. I wonder what we can learn about it from... Let's take a look at who started this whole thing, first off, and then we will delve a little deeper real quick. Abraham, personal life, he went to a tent meeting. There's a Christian tent revival. It's a traveling pastor thing. In 1905, so he would have been, what was that? 1419 at the time, and he found and met his future wife, daughter of a Danish pastor. Go figure. Let's see. This is a surprisingly sparse article. Spokane received a ticket to work from a neighbor who was unable to use it. He traveled to Montana, found menial work, became an itinerant preacher at the age of 20, covering an area of 70 miles. Later, he studied at a seminary in Evanston, Indiana, and married Maddie Hansen in 1910, which was that Danish pastor daughter. He was assigned to Spokane by the Methodist Church, later assigned to Portland, Seattle, one daughter. So basically he was a minister, right, who was put around a bunch of places, and then founded the prayer breakfast after 4 years after talking to FDR here, apparently. Okay, so seems to be a Christian preacher with a bit of a political bent. So let's go ahead and get into the Christian organization with a political bent. The Fellowship, also known as the Family, blah, 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 blah. Influence. Prominent evangelical Christians have described the Fellowship as one of the most, or the most, politically well-connected ministries in the world. Dr. Michael Lindsay, an American sociologist, and former Rice University sociologist who studies the evangelical movement, said, quote, "There is no other organization like the Fellowship, especially among religious groups, in terms of its access or clout among the country's leadership." He also reported that lawmakers mentioned the Fellowship more than any other organization when asked to name a ministry with the most influence on their faith. Lindsay interviewed 360 evangelical elites, among whom, quote, 1 in 3 mentioned Doug Coe or the Fellowship as an important influence, end quote. Lindsay reported it had, quote, relationships with pretty much every world leader, good and bad, and there are not many organizations in the world that can claim that. In 1977, 4 years after he had converted to Christianity, Fellowship member and Watergate conspirator Charles Colson described the group as a veritable underground of Christ's men all through the U.S. government. So, when I say that Christians have been literally infiltrating our government to destabilize it for decades, I'm not being hyperbolic. It's literally happening. Documentation. Sorry. Former Kansas Governor Sam Brownback, also a former member of the Senate Prayer Group, has described Fellowship members' method of operation. Quote, typically one person grows desirous of pursuing an action, a piece of legislation, diplomatic strategy, and others pull behind. Brownback has often joined with fellow family members in pursuing legislation. For example, in '99, he joined together with fellow family members Senator Strom Thurmond and Don Nichols to demand criminal investigation of Americans United for the Separation of Church and State. For Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, which is something that was entrenched in the founding of America. They demanded criminal investigation into a 501c3 organization that want the church to not run our government. Fuck! And in 2005, Brownback joined with Fellowship member Senator Tom Coburn to promote the Houses of Worship Act to allow tax-exempt religious institutions to endorse political candidates, which eventually became, oh God, what was that? It was the Johnson Amendment, right? I can't do this because the fucking Washington Post is paywalled. Okay, it was just who knows? It may or may not be there. Just assume it's gone. Assume the Johnson Amendment is gone because nobody enforces it anyway. Churches can actively promote uh, political candidates to their congregations as they see fit. They can give money, they can take money, they can do whatever they want without reprisal because the government refuses to act in proper fashion. So, what does the family, the fellowship, the international organization actually want to do? Well, they want to induce a Christian theocracy, obviously. Why else would a Christian organization be in the what should I call it? Brain work. Why else would a Christian organization be in politics if not to advance political strategies and advance political goals? Right. That's just by definition, categorical definition, what they have to be doing. To develop and maintain an informal association of people banded together to go out as ambassadors of reconciliation, modeling the principles of Jesus based on loving God and loving others. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what they want to do. Secrecy. In a report on the fellowship, the Los Angeles Times found fellowship members share a vow of silence about fellowship activities. Oddly, it is categorized under U.S. law as a church rather than as a political lobbying organization, so financial sources, budget expenditures, remain unknown. Coe and others cite biblical admonitions against public displays of good works, insisting that they would not be able to tackle their diplomatically sensitive missions if they drew public attention. Members, including congressmen, invoke this secrecy rule when refusing to discuss just about every aspect of the fellowship and their involvement in it. God, it's like the fucking Illuminati, only real. So, anyways, the fellowship, as we are starting to build a bit of you know, what's the word I'm looking for here? Scaffolding, seems to be a incredibly secretive, hyper Christian, theocratic organization that seeks to undermine the United States' democracies and instead push for a unified system of morals under the principles of their church. And in case you haven't quite caught this yet, that's a bad thing because not everybody's in that church. What does this mean for a Catholic, right? A Catholic's probably not going to agree with everything they do. Neither would like a Methodist or an Amish lad, right? An Amish lass, they probably won't fucking appreciate these people like doing certain things. Muslim sure as shit wouldn't. A Jewish person wouldn't. A Hindu wouldn't, right? Anyways, so here we can see activities that the fellowship, the family, or the international organization have been pushing. The National Prayer Breakfast, which we already knew about. Prayer Breakfast Movement, which is a bunch of smaller versions that have infected every level of society in our government, including Congress, the executive branch, the military, business people, the Pentagon. Ugh. They do it in Russia through some of their shit, right? They've done private democracy, or diplomacy, not democracy. I'm apparently having a hard time reading now. Relationships with other organizations. Let's see here. We've got the Wilberforce Foundation, Traditional Values Coalition, which fight against Marxist, leftist, homosexual Islamic coalition. Oh, that's a hell of a thing. I'm not sure I know very many people who are Marxist, leftist, homosexual Islamics. Some of those things don't go together very well, do they? Uh, I don't know. Just for fuck's sake, I swear. Um, Three Swallows Foundation, International Center for Religion and Diplomacy, Young Life International. You get the picture of what's being painted here, right? Let's see. Handling of politicians' extramarital affairs. This should be fun. Let's choose the Pickering case because it's small. Chip Pickering was a United States representative from Mississippi from 97 to 2008, and in 2009, his wife filed suit against his former college sweetheart and alleged mistress. Mrs. Pickering alleged that her husband restarted his relationship with her while he was a United States congressperson prior to while living in the well-known C Street complex in DC. Remember the C Street complex? The C Street complex is it's this little brick building, right? It's this brick building that apparently senators live in as well while living in that C Street. So not only does this C Street Center house their behind the scenes canoodling, it also seems to be a place where the senators live, or maybe just their mistresses. I don't know. The fellowship runs a $1.8 million three-story brick mansion known as C Street. Let's look at this. Let's look at this together, shall we? This is in Washington, D.C., not not Washington State. Sorry, folks who live in the tiny little house. Okay. Here is your C Street. You've got, what is it? One, two, three stories, maybe four or five, depending on basement. I mean, who knows how deep this complex goes? It's clearly stretching underneath the entire city of Washington, D.C. They're coming for us. No, don't take my Alex Jones impersonation seriously. But this is the seat of power of a theocracy, or an attempted theocracy. So that's fun. It is the former covenant for the nearby St. Peter's Church and is located a short distance from the U.S. Capitol. The structure has 12 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, 5 living rooms, and 4 dining rooms, 3 offices, a kitchen, and a small chapel. The facility houses mostly Republican members of Congress. Yep, they just live in a theocratic household. That's cool. It's like the exact opposite of good. Okay, now this is about the fellowship, right? Their property holdings. In 1978, they purchased a big ass mansion. It's on 70 acres. It is used for Bible study, counseling, hymn sings, life mentoring, prayer groups, prayer breakfasts, luncheons, dinners, and hospitality receptions for international reconciliation and conflict resolution initiatives. The home was once surrounded by cedar trees and so was renamed Cedars. Let's see. In March 1990, Wham, which previously owned C Street, purchased a nearby property for $500,000. Sold it to his father. Okay, second property for $1 million. So it looks like they're just basically racking up important buildings that they can use for staging grounds. Right? It's very, very commonplace for large wealthy organizations to do, right? They slurp things up and make sure that they have their fingers in the pies that they need to have. And you got to have places to put your pies, and so they buy places to put their pies, so they put their fingers in their pies. Following? Good. According to White House records from '78, Jimmy Carter traveled to the Cedar Point farm. Oh no, Carter! No! You build so many houses. Other fellowship properties, they've got a Southeast White House, which is located on Pennsylvania Avenue, 19th Street House, brick apartment building, Maryland. Okay, yeah. Excuse me. The Fellowship Foundation, which since 1935 has conducted no public fundraising programs, since 1935 relies entirely on private donations. In 2007, they received nearly $17 million to support their 400 ministries. Among the fellowship's key supporters include billionaire Paul Temple. What does he do? He made the noetic science. That's so noetic science is parapsychological research institute whack job and nonsense, right? This is like people that study psychic projection and think that like meditation and yoga can make you fall through the floor and shit like that, or whatever. Crazy woo-woo nonsense stuff, right? Created the Temple Awards for creative altruism, because we know how well that works out. Yeah. Okay. Three Swallows. We've heard that before. Where was Three Swallows before? Here it is. Three Swallows was relationships with one of their other organizations. We need to look into Three Swallows. Put a pen in that. Put a pen in your swallowing. 1.7 million to the International Foundation, including a bunch of money, more money. That up. Searching. Hope it's not porn. No? Oh, good. It's not porn. We'll check out the charity thing here. Another supporter. So they get a bunch of money, right, from a bunch of different places. What the fuck? The Kingdom Fund, Kingdom Oil Christian Foundation, Twin Cities Christian Foundation? What? Kingdom Oil. Good Christ, they have everything. They're everywhere. Guys, I don't know if you knew this. Listen, look at me. The Christians are everywhere. Okay, so we have a good idea of like what the fellowship, the family, the international organization is. They are a bunch of people insinuating themselves into our society and attempting to create a theocracy. As I've said time and time again for the last half hour or whatever it's been. Now, how does this play in to what I want to talk about today with the National Prayer Breakfast and the Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a Christian hate group, or I'm going to call it a Christian hate group. We'll get there. So, have you guys seen these? I don't know if I'm going to get fucking flagged for this or not, so we'll just kind of take it slowly. These Super Bowl commercials. I know I'm a bit late to this, but deal with me. Let's go through this. These are things that are these Super Bowl ads for the He Gets Us commercials, right? Were put out by the Alliance Defending Freedom and had ties to the fellowship, the family, etc. Right? So let's go through this thing.
There was a family. That played together and laughed together.
Okay.
But as they grew older, opinions widened. Conversations became heated. and reunions became uncomfortable.
Oh no.
Eventually, gatherings stopped because each had to be right.
We don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want that. Oh no.
So that seems pretty innocuous, right? Like, that seems fairly innocuous on its face, right? Let's get into it. So this is from LGBTQ Nation. Loving Christian Super Bowl ads connected to anti-LGBTQ plus hate group. That's right. Who would have guessed? They're laundering fascism through Jesus. Wow. What's that old fucking saying? When fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in the flag and carrying the cross. Yeah, something like that. So, Christian campaign planning to air 2 Super Bowl ads, blah, 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 blah. The He Gets Us campaign, which is quote unquote not affiliated with a specific church or denomination. They're trying to connect to like Jesus being kind of like an influencer of his time. But the He Gets Us is a subsidiary of the Servant Foundation, which has donated $50 million to the Alliance Defending Freedom. So the He Gets Us campaign, right, that could afford to buy multiple 30-second Super Bowl ads. Oh, hold on. A 3-year, $1 billion campaign. And so, like, when we're talking earlier, when we were talking to Miles about like the GDP of America, $1 billion, like 130 billion is small potatoes, right? And it is to the United States government. This is not the United States government. These are private organizations, and $1 billion is a lot of fucking money, okay? It's incomprehensible, almost. It's like, I want you to imagine all the rice you've ever seen in your life. Now, take that rice, add about 20,000 more piles of the same amount of rice, and then triple that, and you might be getting close to the amount of rice that would be 1 billion grains of rice, right? It's obscene how big this number is. Okay. So the Alliance Defending Freedom. If you have been a victim of online harassment for being queer, if you have listened to somebody talk to someone and they were being anti-queer, what's that guy's name? Knowles from the Daily Wire recently, he came out and said that like transgenderism needs to get like zapped off the face of the planet. Basically, he's just calling for open genocide. There's a good chance that that was being funded by the Alliance Defending Freedom in some way, shape, and or form. Because it is one of the most well-organized and influential Christian interest groups in the United States. They own Amy Coney Barrett. She's in the group. Mike Pence, William Barr, Jeff Sessions. Are these names that ring a bell to you? Because they fucking well should. These people have been guided and funded by this group, which has been working to outlaw abortion and remove queer people from existence. We can go through if you want. I don't really want to go through all of their leadership and stuff. We did that with the Fellowship Foundation. It gave us a little bit of a background into kind of how they work. This is a much younger organization that's much more radical. Look, here is their opposition to LGBTQ rights, to queer people. I'm just going to highlight this, and we're going to keep going, and we're going to go right there. That, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs is just probably the tip of the iceberg to a very deep dive that we could do on the Alliance Defending Freedom. But what you need to understand about this organization is that they are operating on local, state, federal, and international levels in courts, in Congress, in school commission boards to remove your rights and kill you. Hell, probably me too, because I'm fucking queer as shit. They don't like abortion. They don't like birth control. They don't like euthanasia. They reject Jews. They're anti-vaccination and lockdown. Like, I mean, honestly, it is just like a group of the single most evil people that currently exist in American society. And, man, like, oh, as far as things we could actually do stuff about, this is actually one of those things that, like, pushing them out into the open, openly talking about the Alliance Defending Freedom, the Three Swallows Foundation, the fucking God, what was it called? Whatever this fucking guy was doing, the He Gets Us guys, the Fellowship, the National Prayer Breakfast, like, all of these things are interconnected, which is why I started with the National Prayer Breakfast, because you start down this rabbit hole with something that is visible and open to public scrutiny at a national level because it's talked about and the president goes there, and it's very, like, religiosity centric. And then you start going down the rabbit hole into who funds this and who controls it, where are they connected to, what do they stand for, and then you get to this: the guys that are on their side of the vanguard, outwriting and trying to push the boundaries, trying to take and nitpick all of their little things for them. And I feel very, very strongly that we need more light on these topics. We need to be able to take a look. Ew, got a hair in my mouth. To take a look at what is going on and be able to identify these things when we see them working in real life. I mean, for fuck's sake, the ADF has Amy Coney Barrett, who is probably the least, like, I'm probably more qualified to sit on the Supreme Court than she is, because at least I would listen to fucking Cersei or not, Stare Decisis. I would at least go and look at the history of law, right? Just, it's utterly kind of almost traumatizing in a way, right? Like, to think about just how deeply entrenched they are in our government, and how hard it is to uproot these very powerful forces. And I think that it's something that left-leaning folks have been very bad at over the course of our time here in America. The Democrats certainly aren't going to get them out. They're part of it. I mean, to an extent, not all Democrats, of course, but like a pretty hefty amount are all pretty pro-Christian. Um, it's rough. I'm going to echo a sentiment I heard on another live streamer's platform. If you're not already uh, left leaning and part of the DSA, the Democratic Socialists for America, I know that they're not great. I know that they have their own problems as an organization, but like they're small enough that they can be actively changed by new influx of people. And I think that you should sign up. If you're not already a member, sign up to be a member. I am. Um, if you can, go down to their meetings, raise new topics, push the conversation in the way you want. Get involved in local elections, get involved in the way that your town and city are ran. Help out at schools, do whatever you can, basically, I'm saying, to try and begin a movement from the bottom of society, the most basic levels, the structural foundations of America. And as leftists, we need to infect just as heavily our society as these people have. We can't hope to push against this brick wall of America. We need to be within sight of the wall. You have to be the vines that put your roots through the bricks to push them out, right? Before we can put in new bricks, we gotta get those old corrupt bricks out and gotta put in those new shiny socialist bricks, right? So yeah, I will end this as I tend to always do when talking about heavy shit like this. Push. Get yourself up and open. Get yourself as equipped as you can. Go to protests. Support local elections. Put people in office that you believe in. If you don't have anyone in your area that looks good, maybe it's time to run for office, y'all. Like, I don't think I would do good in local office, or else I would be running for it. Just personal issues aside, don't think I would be good as a politician. At least not in the current system. So I'm not. But that may change. Who knows? Maybe you'll see Jake the Fake Jake on a billboard near you. Probably not. I'm in Seattle. There's a lot of good folk out here already. And if you know anyone who is queer or you're queer yourself, do you have yourself, make sure you're in a safe community. Make sure you know people that will support you in hard times that are going to come. Make sure that you are able to defend yourself as necessary, whatever that looks like for you. I'm not going to tell you how to defend yourself. You're all adults and intelligent. I'm sure that you can reasonably figure out how to do that yourself. If you can't, well, talk to some folks around you that you know and you feel safe with. Talk to them about how you would be defended in situations that could occur. It's important to put yourself in those positions, I think. So yeah. With all that being said, kind of a down note to end on, but I think we had a good conversation today. Had a good brief discussion as to the